This is the second part of our JCON interviews, which were recorded at a conference in May.
Welcome to the Foojay Podcast, all your news about OpenJDK.
This episode focuses on general evolutions within the Java world and how they influence how we write code and develop applications. Let's start with Steve Poole, who spoke at the conference about designing Java APIs in a modern way. I asked him what he meant by modern way, and we looked back at the history of Java.
Historically, we've taught people to follow the sorts of API standards design thoughts that were around before Java started. So like solid and things like that. And if you look at AWT specifically, as a really good example of, we have interfaces and abstract classes and concrete methods and concrete classes and things like that. And they were reasonably good ideas when they were created. But since then, we've moved on and we now have streams and we have records and sealed interfaces and a whole bunch of stuff that, if you use them in the right way, give you a much more flexible and reliable API that you can continue to extend. Because one of the scary things is that if you're a follower of a thing called SEMVer, semantic versioning, the three, okay. The idea is that that's a signal to your users as to whether things are going to change. So you have 3 points. One, the lowest one says, I'm just fixing bugs. Another one says, here's a new feature or modify. And the top one says, hey, there could be a breaking change. Unfortunately, when you look at the stats from Maven Central, it tells you that it doesn't matter what changes, whether it's the first, the second, third, there's likely to be a breaking change. It's like 30% chance every time. And so that means that developers don't understand how to write evolving APIs. And so I'm here to talk about a way of using sealed classes and just different design patterns to give you another way of thinking about how to do this. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm also going to tweak their nose a bit about what they know about how the Java works, because what I've also discovered doing this is that lots of people don't realize some of the edges and they get bitten.
Okay, the corner cases, as they call them. It's very interesting that you say a lot has changed. Java has changed a lot. What was your first Java version?
0.99a, I think.
So let's conclude you were there from the start, 30 years of Java?
Yeah, pretty much. I wasn't in the IBM Java team at the very first day, though I was working with them. So a few months after the IBM Java team had started, I joined. So worked there. And my very first thing was to work on a thing called AS400. And so my claim to fame is I produced the very first 64-bit JVM that was compliant. And then after that, I was running the Java team on and off in various ways for years, working for a team that did Java on 22 different platforms. So
that's a nice list. What is a few of the most important changes? What happened in Java?
From a language point of view, obviously we've got virtual threads now. That's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, but that's obviously a big thing. But from an API point of view, from a general stuff, it's got to be the streams, it's got to be the lambdas, those sorts of things. And then I like all the little language tweaks that have gone through. But streams and lambdas, I think, just makes it a completely different environment. You can write code and do things in a much more optimal way than you could ever do before.
And then you have these new stream gathers that appeared, I think in 24, 25, I don't know exactly when. So it proves that still something which was already a major change cannot even be further improved.
Yes, that's true. And what happens, history shows this, is that you put out something, you think you've got it right, and then people use it. And then you find that there are different use cases than you expected, or there are performance characteristics. Or in the example, I think, with the gatherers, is that the people get very confused how to use streams, and they ended up with a bunch of ways of writing them that were not particularly optimal. So I think I really like the fact that the Java team learned from these things and go, hey, we can fix that for you. We can solve problems that you've come across that we perhaps weren't aware of, or maybe we did, but we didn't think was high priority. And absolutely, it continues to evolve. I really don't see it changing. Yeah.
Is that also why these preview features are so important, that they can be used, but you should not use them in production yet?
Yeah, you should try them out. You shouldn't ignore them. You should certainly use them and give feedback. I think if you feedback to the Java team what you think of this stuff, and there are enough people out, the Java team, the DevRel team they've got, there's a lot of people, feedback your views on this stuff. I think given that the release train process they have, it's exactly right to say we're giving a preview, and then it may change tomorrow. It may go in production. I think it's a perfect way of getting to use this, provided, of course, you're willing to use the next version. Yeah.
Yeah, you should keep track of the versions and always jump to the latest one. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, in Java? I'm not sure I'm keeping track of what's going on. I mean, there's just so much stuff coming out. What am I looking forward to? No, the gathering stuff I was keeping an eye on. So that's the next thing I really want to play with. And with this API design thing that I've been promoting, I need to do more with that. I need to show more people how to do that. So I'm not sure I'm looking so much at new features. I think with streams and lambdas, that there's so much more possibility to write different sorts of code. We can look at a whole bunch of API designs that return sets and arrays and things like that. Think about turning them into a stream. Think about different ways of using the streams. Yeah.
Hanno Embregts is a regular guest on this podcast. At the conference, we discussed the new features in Java 24 and how Java is used in education. He explains how you can become an expert by educating others or giving a talk.
It's a very good thing also to start teaching a subject if you want to grasp it fully, because it's one thing to study a subject and apply it, and you're kind of forgiving for yourself if you don't grasp everything. You'll be like, okay, I'll grasp that in a few months, or I'll just ask a coworker about it, and then you tend to forget that, and then there's this tiny gap in your knowledge that you're never forced to learn it. But if you have to explain a topic to your students, you want to be on top of everything that you're telling them. So if you're like 90% sure that you know a subject, then start teaching it, and then you have to learn a bit more.
Then you find the missing 10%.
Right, you find the missing 10%, and that is the basis for this talk. So I had 3 or 4 course days about Jakarta EE, and I've put all the questions that I had, so the final 10%, in a talk, and then I demonstrate the 10% of questions I had using live coding and a few slides to back it up. So that's...
You're not only talking about Java and Jakarta, you're also writing a lot about it on Foojay. Thanks for that. Java 24 was an important one and a major blog post?
Yeah, it was. I think I started with Java 20 to summarize the content of the Java release, mainly so that I could explain it in a simpler way to the people I teach. Because reading through all the JEPs is doable, but it's kind of, there's a lot of jargon there, and that's no surprise, because the people who write it work on Java full time, right? So I just want to paraphrase the JEPs in a way that it is more people can relate to it better. So I tend to use my own examples, domains that are very relatable. And that is the way I like to describe each Java release. And so when Java 24 came out a few months ago, I was teaching a class of students again. And while they walked in the room, I just had the Foojay homepage open, right? And they sat down and I said, "Congratulations, everyone." And they said, "With what? Is it your birthday?" And I said, No, Java 24 was released today. And they stared at the screen for a while and they said, "Hey, isn't that an article by you?" And I looked behind me and I said, "Oh, now that you mention it, that is an article by me, right? Oh, I didn't know it was up there." And they didn't believe me, of course. But I said, "By the way, this is Foojay, and you can catch up with the latest news in Java in the same way as I do. Just check out the website. It is not a black magic or something. It is just keep track of the right resources." So.
That's what they call shameless self-promotion.
Yes, but when you're a teacher, you can do that, right? And get away with it. So,
so you're teaching Java in education. Is that a typical Dutch thing, that there is a lot of Java in schools? Is that an important language for the Netherlands?
That's a good question. So when I was in college, it was an important one because the teachers felt that it was a very easy way to learn object orientation and easier than the alternatives that were available back then. But I'm past 40, so what do I know? The students that I teach right now, they said they only got taught Python in their education, and now that they're employed by a Dutch government agency, they are asked to learn Java, or they could choose to learn C# or Java. And some of them chose Java because they liked the sound of the language, and the other half just chose it because there were no positions left in the C# track. But now that I've taught them for 2 months or 3 months, they're like, I think Java's my favorite language now. So that got me thinking we should really be ahead of this, right? Don't leave it to chance, but make sure that more people fall in love with Java. And I asked them, what made you change your mind? And they said, well, all our fellow students said Java is very old and verbose, and then they got told Java 24 by me, and they're like, wow, that's kind of a modern feature, pattern matching and switch expressions and records. That's very, very concise and elegant. And I said, well, I think your fellow students didn't read up on the latest version of Java. So
Isn't that something which returns, that people who think Java is verbose, is old, is slow, that they are stuck on Java 8, probably in some kind of project that they are working on?
Yeah, I think that must be the explanation. And also when these students got taught Java, probably it was an older version. So I think we've got a task here as a community to, educate the people who are educators and ask them to use the latest versions. Yeah.
Will we have a blog post about Java 25 in September?
Probably, yes.
I think I saw a first list with JEPs. It's smaller than 24, right?
It looks like it's going to be a smaller release until now. Yeah. I already saw the structured concurrency 5th preview. I'm very excited about that because it has some API improvements. They didn't make the cut for Java 24. So I'll definitely write something about that. Yeah.
Looking forward, because it's the next long-term support version, which we will see a lot in production mainly.
Yeah, hopefully.
Karl Heinz Marbaise has a long history in Java development and within the community. He explains what recently changed in stream gatherers and how many decisions made about changes in Java are related to future evolutions while still focusing on the stability of the complete Java system.
I'm working as a Java developer for about 20 years in the meantime. And I have a talk today about stream gatherers today. I'm also a Java champion and doing a lot of work in open source for the Apache Maven project, the PMC, former chairman and things like that.
Okay. A lot of activity in the community?
I think the community is very important in open source in general, because without the community you're not really relevant in any way. So in any way you combine things, what you think and what the community thinks, and combine that into maybe new ideas, or just working together with the community, or just sharing some ideas or discussion things like that, what is happening here on JCON as well, because you're meeting so many people here and just talking about ideas or what is going on and things, how people are thinking about specific stuff or details, or what you think could be new ideas, how to evolve things or something like that.
Okay. Back to your talk. So it's about stream gatherers. Mm-hmm. What changed? What's the most important change in the recent Java versions?
I would say the opening in some interfaces and possibilities to give more opportunities to the developers in their hand, because Stream API, for example, has been introduced in Java 8, for example, and it's a long time there. In the meantime, we have a long time there. And you come to the point that there are some limitations in there. For example, a collector is a terminal operation, and you have the intermediate operation like map, flat map, and things like that. But exactly at that point, the stream gatherers is opening for the intermediate operations. And that gives you more opportunities to make your code more readable, more understandable, more maintainability, or better maintainability, and gives you things to express your ideas in a more better way than it could be done today, because so many people are using that. That's a very good thing, but sometimes you have to do some operations and collect things first, create a list, an intermediate list or something like that, to continue then working on that. But the stream gatherers makes it open to implement your own intermediate operations, which makes it more easier to understand, maintainable, and often to reduce the number of intermediate results. So it also saves sometimes a lot of memory, so you don't need to create a list and work on that. So you can do that directly and start working on the intermediate results. So that's the thing. It's becoming more open and more give you more opportunities. It's not perfect, of course, and also the Stream API is not perfect and has some limitations, of course, but it makes it more easier to use. I think that's the most important thing over the time.
Is that how Java evolves, the feedback from the community? We love that this was added, but we have some limitations that we want to get fixed?
Yeah, if you think about that, because at the beginning, the Stream API was a very good thing. Many people needed to get used to it because they said, okay, I will stuck with the traditional loops or something like that. Many people complained about performance and things like that at the beginning, but that has changed over the time a lot in a lot of ways. For example, with Java 11, 17, 21 and things like that. But then the feedback, if you take a look based on how it has changed and take a look into the JEPs and see the reference to the bug reports into the Jira there, you see people are complaining in some ways about that. Okay, that would be a good functionality into the Stream API or things like that. But the problem from this perspective of the language designers or the library designers in that way is, what kind of functionality should we introduce which are so general that everybody will take an advantage of that? And that's a very complicated decision to make. So the end of this discussion, I think, was to make more an interface or some kind of intermediate, like the stream gatherers, for example, done so to make it open that a developer can do it on its own. So you don't need to wait, sometimes in the future there will be some enhancement there. So it makes it easier for us to use it, in particular in special situations, because one domain is different than the other, and one developer likes something like that instead of that, or something like that. These discussions, and I think that makes it more or less useless to discuss about that. So you have the tool set here now to do that in your own way.
Is that what happens a lot in Java, that some kind of libraries get implemented into Java, like you had a Lombok to remove boilerplate, but then you had records, which actually replace a lot of the Lombok functionality. Do you see more of those cases?
I would say the first thing, the idea of records was not to reduce boilerplate code. The idea was to have a nominal type of data carrier, which is immutable in itself, which is not 100% correct, because if you put a list on that on a record, it's not immutable anymore. But the idea makes sense in several ways. In particular, if you think about the relationship with sealed classes, for example, or interfaces and all this stuff, and if you put that together, you get algebraic data types, which is a very good thing. So that makes it easier to go that way and solve other problems. And it is also very important to integrate that over the time, because many people you see, okay, this point, and this point has been enhanced, but many people lack the view from a 30,000 feet bird's view, because you don't see the combination, because you have some features, some picks here, something there. But if you go some steps backwards and see if you get the overall picture, for example, with the algebraic types, that's very important to see that. And many people discuss that about Lombok and things like that, or records, or just reduce boilerplate. There was only a small part of that, because then things like switch expressions and things like that combined to that makes it much more powerful. And I think that's the most important thing over the time, that it had been handled by a language architect in a very good way, which I think it's a really hard job to do in the right way over the time, to do that in the right way and make these combinations over the time all over to get a total better result than just picking this feature, for example.
Yeah, I think it's presentation already a few years ago that the way the records were designed was to one day be able to handle them better in switch expressions. So there is from the start an idea. It's not now, but soon it will work this way.
Yeah, for example, as you mentioned, the switch expressions, for example, if you do that and combine that with pattern matching, for example, then you have exactly that point. The records are one thing, which is a very good thing. Yes, of course, it reduces some boilerplate. I think it's a nice thing to have that. But in the end, you can combine that with many things like pattern matching, and then you have a switch expression where you can use a record as a type and things like that, and combine that to much more powerful things. And if you combine that to, for example, C classes and implementation, because a record can implement an interface, and then you can combine these things, and that makes very powerful things possible, which many people complain about in the beginning. Oh, use Kotlin or something like that, or Scala or OCaml or whatever we are talking about. But over the time, if you combine these things, then you can get very powerful things. And many people, unfortunately, don't really know the new things in Java over the time, because they say, oh, we are at 11, 17, 21, and don't know the new features because they don't really read that or understand that maybe, or have not the time maybe. Don't blame someone, but it's very hard job or very challenging to be up to date with these new features. And I think the feedback from the community to the language architects and the OpenJDK developers is a very, very important thing to see, okay, that feature works or that works not, or something like values, the vector things, all that stuff is very important to get that these feedback loops here, because the language architect and many developers on the OpenJDK are working on that, but the whole world is maybe doing something different. And I think that the language is for solving really problems. And so if it is a good idea to make the job a bit easier here, or to express things in a more convenient way than before, I think that is a good way, and to improve the productivity for developers.
So your talk is about improvements in Java 24. What are you looking forward to in the next versions?
If I correctly remember, not up to date, the scope value is part of the targeted as far as I know, which is a very interesting thing. I'm not very deep in these details, but that looks very good to have that in a way to express things which were at the moment not very good possible, or not even possible, to say it that way. There are other things like, if I correctly remember, the content line is not completed yet because it's just filling up over the few weeks. But there are coming up new things like structured concurrency is another preview as far as I know, because what I've seen so far from structured concurrency will completely change the way to handle things like that. As, for example, completable futures and things like that. It was a different story, and in some ways a bit hard to use, or the expression or the expressiveness from structured concurrency is much better than the old one with completable futures, for example.
So a lot to look forward to.
I think so, yeah, definitely. There's much coming up there. You should look up that on the OpenJDK, things like that on the website. There is always the information, what is coming up in the JEPs, and take a look. I can strongly recommend the people to read the JEPs, because there are so many information in these JEPs about these, how they work, what the goal was, for example, what is the idea behind that, or what is the idea to target what kind of problem. Because if you really read that, then you understand much more details about that. I think that's very important to read that.
And if you don't read it, visit a talk like yours about one example.
Yeah, okay, that might be a possibility too, or an option too, yes. But I strongly recommend to read that, because it's a different thing, like visiting a talk and see some parts of that. Maybe you can't do that in 45 minutes or something, and reading a complete JEP takes much longer. And I always recommend to play around with these new features and just try them out. Just write some tests about that, take a look how they work, and what are you expecting? Have you really understood the problem, for example? Or I have coming to my mind the class fill API, things like that. That's a very complicated thing, but if you dig into that, that's a very interesting way to do that. And I think that will solve many problems in the future with older, like ASM, things like that. And the dependencies for libraries from a particular JDK version or coming up with new version after the new versions are coming out. And I think that's a very good thing. But you need to invest some time, yes.
Invest some time, read the JEPs, and then follow us on Foojay, where we talk about all these things.
That would be a possibility too, yeah, because Foojay has many interesting articles, or Insight.java has many very detailed articles about that. It took some time on also to take a look on the YouTube channel of the Java people, and that is very important to do that on a regular basis to get some insights how it works or what the idea behind that. Maybe you don't need to use it in your current project, but just to get an insight what is working on, what is going on there in the community, in particular on the OpenJDK part, and what is coming up in new releases and what you can expect from that. I think that is a very important thing.
Okay, Horstmann came to JCON to give 2 talks, one about Project Valhalla and one about Project Loom. Those 2 projects are shaping the way Java evolves and how we can write better code. He also explains how JEPs, Java enhancement proposals, are used in that Java evolution process.
Valhalla will certainly change the way Java works in the internals if and when it's finally ready. Loom is ready today, and it will surely change the way that people write like server-side applications. They will thank their stars that they no longer have to write them in that dreaded reactive style.
Okay, so what are the main changes for both Valhalla and Loom?
Well, so let's start with Loom. Loom works. It's there in 21. It'll be even better in 25 because it'll remove some annoying restrictions about the intrinsic locks. And its big promise is that right now, if you have an application where you want to have high throughput, where you have more incoming requests than the number of platform threads, you're forced into a very uncomfortable programming style whose promoters tell you it's good for you, but it actually is a pain. And so you can just write the way that you would like to write. You make a blocking call and you just block. Your virtual thread will get parked. When the answer is ready, it'll wake up again. And that's pretty much automatic. There are, of course, all sorts of little gotchas, both real and perceived. And so what I'm doing is I'm showing how you can actually measure whether you're affected by one of them.
Okay. And then Project Valhalla is another project?
Well, Valhalla is now, I think, 11 years old, and so its grand scheme is to bring what's called value types into the platform. So value type is like a primitive type today, where it's something that's flat, that's small, that can fit into a register or a few. And if you have an array of them, you don't have any indirection, you don't have pointers. And so soon you'll be able to do your own value types, points or tuples or things like that. And the question there really is efficiency. And so what I'm showing is by actually looking at the bytecodes, the machine codes that are generated, not just the bytecodes, because there you can't see anything, but the physical machine codes, there'll be some benchmarking, some measuring of memory, and you'll really see that the performance is what they promise. There's not much syntax to it, so the interesting thing is really by looking under the hood.
These projects are big changes, but actually they are implemented and released into JEPs, so smaller improvements. Isn't that a difficult way to manage the project, or does it really make it easy to bring evolutions into Java?
I've seen situations where the JEP process didn't really work as well as one might like in pattern matching, where I think that incremental approach was not a success. But with Loom in particular, I think it's very nicely done. There was several phases of implementations. There was a lot of input taking, and still today there's some refinements to the APIs. And so this was not rushed. it's rolled out in a way that makes it, I think, reasonable for the community to absorb it. With Valhalla, it's very hard to say. It's such a huge undertaking to make such a really incredible change to the entire platform that you have to at some point do it in stages. And so there was a talk by Brian Götz about how they discovered, after doing so many iterations, that by doing things in a particular order and in a particular way, that a lot of the problems collapsed out. And I think that they wouldn't have figured that out if they hadn't given themselves the time to do it in increments. How it's going to be rolled out with the JEPs, there is now a JEP for value types, and we'll probably see that at some point, maybe in Java 26. I'm not making any promises. I'm not working for Oracle. So I think that rollout process, it's hard to do it in any other way. So I think overall we should be thankful that this thing has worked out that way. Of course, it works fantastically well for kind of smaller features that you can wrap your head around. But anyway, I think it is amazing that Java, after 30 years, it's alive and well and thriving, and it is getting better.
So you have mentioned those 2 projects. There are a lot more projects ongoing. Are there a few others that you're really looking forward to that they will arrive soon in Java?
Well, the one thing that I'm personally looking forward to be finalized is that thing that now you no longer have to write public static void main, and if you write small programs, then you don't even have to have a class. Now that sounds like a silly thing, right? Because everyone uses Java for big iron projects. But the truth is, I've been using Java as a scripting language now for several years, just because you can. And I'm here to tell you that it is a better scripting language than that other 6-letter language that everyone is so enamored about, for the simple reason that Java is compile time typed. And so I find myself writing these scripts now more convenient because no longer having to write so much boilerplate. And my IDE tells me right away whether I made a stupid mistake, whereas in that other language with those 6 letters, I find out that I did something stupid when I run the program and it does something strange.
I do love also the approach that JBang has brought us, that you can also include dependencies in those single file applications. I use it a lot to demo Py4j, to show how you can interact with electronics on a Raspberry Pi. I think indeed for education purposes and example purposes, that the simplified syntax will make it a lot easier for a lot of people to get started with Java.
Yes, and amen to JBang. That thing with the dependency management, where you can simply say, add those libraries to my project, that is something that Java does need to have. So I was just at Java 1 and gave a talk on using Java in the small, and I kind of derisively said, how come Java has never heard of this thing called Maven Central? And afterwards, Stuart Marks told me, we are looking at this, and we do need to have a solution that does something like that. And so I very much look forward to a JEP that will do something just to that effect, because it really is an important part of the picture. And another thing on the positive side, actually, once you use something like that, it is pretty convenient, whereas in other environments that should remain unnamed with 6 letters, just try to do your dependency management. It's madness.
Yeah, I totally agree that this is one of the strong things, that you can really build a project very easily in Java. Even if you go to very big projects with a lot of dependencies, there's one central tool that allows you to do all this.
Yeah, and that I think is another thing, that we are so lucky that we have all the tooling available. We have fantastic IDEs. I've known people who say, "Oh, I'll just do this thing in VS Code," and I say, "Why?" Right? Here you have an IDE that does all sorts of things for you, and I guess you could not do that, but I don't quite see the point. And also, you have people say Maven is old and uses XML, but Maven is pretty amazing. And on the other hand, something like JBang for programming in the small is also pretty amazing. So there's great tool support, and so Java really more and more has become like my Swiss Army knife for everything.
Java on Raspberry Pi was briefly mentioned in this interview with Kay, but Miro Wengner had a presentation at JCON where he demonstrated his Robo4j project that extends Py4j and controls a robot arm. He uses this project to explain Java modules. I asked him to explain what Robo4j provides.
It's a collection of the libraries, the modules that allows you to build easily some advanced robotics IoT system, I would say. It's a message passing framework, very light one. It provides the training model. It allows. I have a robotic hand with me. I will show it. I hope it still works on the stage. We will go through some monitoring. I know I have already burned one servo, but we will go to this, how to avoid it. We have a Grafana, right? But mainly the talk will be about the Java module system and how to even think about it and why Java module system is important in for development of our application. Actually, I know it has been many times presented as a Java feature. Yeah, that's true. And maybe that's also the reason why many developers are trying to or hesitate to use it because it belongs to platform.
The modules were a big change in the JDK. Why are they so important and what are the advantages?
Well, I would put it like this. The modules before, I know it's the selling point of the modules is the before we had a class path. Basically, there is one fact, everything would landed on the class path is a public. It wouldn't be the issue, right? In fact, if you use the reflection, any malicious code can do the reflection over the class path. But still, I think if you're selling to your manager, oh, did we have a class path? And this, he has no idea what you are talking about. So I would put it like this. So actually, module system kind of guides you how to be nice to the platform you use. It don't necessarily have to be Raspberry Pi. It could be your containers. Actually, it guides you. It gives you the guarantee, yeah, at the compile time and the runtime that you don't turn to the unexpected situation. That not necessarily have to be illegal access exception, but it actually provides you the documentation. What I have experienced as a consultant, so I think the companies are paying a lot of money for maintaining the software. You know, it's not hard right now to write just software. Well, I mean, once the code is there, you have to maintain. I think it can become very challenging, even a little bit format in a way that you can deliver the product. So I mean, the modules should not be avoided or just by the developers stand completely against to use them because it actually is something that it helps. It makes the platform usage deterministic. Mm-hmm. Not just the class path where we have really non-deterministic behavior. Mm-hmm. We've been witnessing this.
Dmitry Chuyko talked at JCON about improving the startup and performance of your Java applications in containers. I asked him about the most important takeaway from his talk.
Please think about the JVM options. Don't let other people or don't hope that other people will tune your container for you. Mm-hmm. That just won't happen.
And I only have experience with small applications myself, so I don't tune anything. I just have Java jar and start the thing. But there are a lot of options I know there in the runtime. What are the most important ones that I could use, for instance, in Docker?
At least for now, there's one extra important option. Just see and specify the run percentage for your heap. Otherwise, the just default heuristic won't work well in container environments.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other ones that we should know of?
Yeah, of course. You can choose your garbage collector, which also is related to your memory consumption and your latency, which is extremely important and extremely easy.
As I said, I only have small applications. I never worried about the garbage collector. I never even thought about that there are different ones. And apparently this is a very fascinating topic, the amount of work that has gone into these garbage collectors. What's the most important takeaway about which garbage collector to use and why to choose a different one?
Yeah, of course. Basically, they fall into categories pretty clearly, depending on the key metric that you have. So just first determine the key metric that you're focused on, and after you will be able to easily select your garbage collector and try it.
There's a lot of things going on in Java with all the small, fast releases we have every 6 months. What is for you the most important evolution recently?
I think the most important evolution recently is Spring Boot switching from supporting all the versions of Java to having 17 as a minimum, which drives now a lot of migrations, and I think that's the reality that we have.
Yeah, because if you hear people talking about Java is old, Java is verbose, they still refer to Java 8 actually.
They may refer to, I don't know, Java 1.2 or something. You know the source of this story? I think there was an article, even if it's not available anymore. And it was like Java is getting old, just startups stopped selecting Java. And it was 2006, this article was issued, 2006. Okay, what happened to that startups? Yeah. And what happened to Java?
Yeah, I need to pick your battles. What are you looking forward to in the next versions of Java?
Really many things, but I think Project Valhalla is the most kind of awaited thing that may bring some surprises.
What will it help developers? How will they be more productive, or will it be easier coding, for instance?
There are some consequences or conditions to make it happen, like explicit null safety, which change life of developers. Maybe that will be a bit harder for someone to use that or to see it, but that's...
It was mentioned before here, Kotlin has a better way of handling null safety. Is it something we should have in Java too?
There's always compatibility concerns.
So we should see and expect what's happening. There's a lot of people here at the hallway. I don't know if you can show it. Yes. Are you also one of those visitors of a conference who focuses on the hallway track?
Yes, I am. I would say.
And what did you learn, for instance, these days?
Just meeting new people, checking some assumptions about how things work, what makes developers suffer, which is important for us.
The final guest in this podcast is Jens Knipper, Java developer at OpenValue. He recently published a blog post on Foojay, and he explained how he created a system to receive emails with Java. We also discussed how Java evolves to write more readable code.
It was about receiving emails in Java using POP3 or IMAP. And yeah, it was at some point I was giving a talk for a meetup where I actually wondered how could you test emails. And then I came up with you could use Greenmail to do it, like a mock mail server. But then I struggled a lot with, hey man, how do I even read emails in the first place? And Java has like email bindings, but there was not really a lot of documentation how to use it properly and stuff like this. And if you would find something, I'll even say it was kind of dangerous sometimes to use, because if you read emails, you import data from outside, and it's like
maybe there could be something insecure in the attachments.
Totally, like code injections or whatever. When you put it into your database, you gotta cleanse it before you actually use it. And that's why I thought, it makes totally sense to write an article about it and put a focus on that one.
Did you need any libraries to read mail? How good is Java, basic Java, in reading the mails?
It's just Java has a mail package, I think Java Mail, and I could just use that one. No external dependencies, nothing. Very nice.
The reason that you write a blog post for Foojay, is it to better understand the topic, or to illustrate that you could actually manage it? Because for a lot of writers, I can only write a blog post if I really master the subject. Is was that one of the goals of this article?
So I started logging, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And usually my approach is when it takes really long to solve something, like when you need half an hour or something to solve something, and there's not really a lot of documentation or whatever. And so now there's LLMs. If they are misleading as well, it's also a good point. Then I think, that's a good topic for a blog post. And at that point I said, okay, let's write it. I published it on my blog, personal blog. And we actually think we had like a talk with the Foojay team. They wanted to reach, they wanted more articles, get more reach. I said, it would be a good idea to cross-post. And it actually generated a lot of reach, to be honest. I didn't expect that. So the article was in some newsletters then afterwards, and I was kind of impressed.
So that's a message we can share with other authors. If you already have your own personal blog related to Java or anything in that world, you can just cross-post it on Foojay and have more reach on your own website.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's one goal we have achieved. So if others want to join Foojay, they can definitely do. What other evolutions within Java are you following? Because there's a lot of things happening with those fast releases.
Yeah, so I think a few months ago, I had to give a training at a customer about modern Java, like the latest Java features. And at that point, I had to actually research what new features were there and so like which affect the average developer, so like day-to-day use. And there was actually so many nice things, and I wondered, so what I really like is the new switch expressions. It makes it really beautiful and nice to read code actually.
I think we have a few posts about that on Foojay. If you compare Java 8 if then else with the current switch approach, you can achieve a much more readable and clean code.
Yeah, totally. And it was actually part of the training as well to transform an old application using the new features and actually see how much better readable it is in the end.
Thanks to my guests who joined for a talk in the Foojay booth. In the next episode, we will look into AI and the many use cases and ways you can use it in Java development. Thank you for listening to this episode. Please subscribe to the Foojay Podcast in your favorite app or on YouTube. Keep an eye on Foojay for future articles and podcasts about development and everything related to the Java world. See you next time.
Give me a Foo, give me a J, give me the friends of OpenJDK.